I'm Sandy Rakowitz, and this is my animal communication breakthrough.
So, Sandy, tell me how you got started in animal communication.
Well, interestingly enough, one of my horses that I got 32 years ago, uh, through our behavior issues, or his behavior issues, it's really our behavior issues. um, I didn't think it was mine at the time. I thought everything was him. But yeah, through those challenges, I had been training horses and teaching horseback riding for uh, 10, 15 years at that point. And everything that I knew wasn't working with this particular horse. And I kept looking and searching for what would be helpful, because I had a strong sense about this beautiful being inside this shut down shell. And so I sought out, one of the things that I sought out was animal communication, and it changed our lives.
Wow. And so you saw how well it worked, and then you started learning it?
Yeah, I was actually quite skeptical initially, which I find interesting because I was very intuitive growing up and believed in ESP and all that in the 70s and stuff. But when I heard about animal communication, I was very skeptical. I had had this horse for probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years at that point. And I kept hearing, I was rooming with this person. She kept telling me about this woman named Penelope Smith and how she was, the sessions that she'd had with different horses, and how useful that was and how amazing, and the stories and the changes. And I was like, yeah. And at some point I was continuing to have issues with my horse. And so I thought, maybe I'm going to give that a try. And I had a session with Penelope, and it was life-changing. It was one of those pivotal experiences where she gave information about my horse that nobody could have known. And that it just, what it did, it awakened that place inside of me that, like, horses, animals really are conscious beings, and they do make choices about life and death. My horse at the time was 7 years old, and he was not thriving at all. And he told her that he wasn't sure if he wanted to live.
Wow.
And I was so, it rocked me to my core. And there were some other things, but that was the key piece. And I was like, I want to be able to do what she's doing. It tapped into something so deep inside of me. And so it's Penelope. It was Penelope. It was really this horse. Penelope was part of the vehicle. So this horse, pictured right behind me, that was taken 2 years ago. He just passed away a few months ago at age 37.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So yeah.
30 more years.
Yeah.
Saved his life.
So yeah. And prior to that, I had him up for sale, and through that session realized I really love this horse. It just touched something so profoundly deep inside of me. And what unfolded over our 32 years together is him helping me to awaken all these different parts of myself that were pretty asleep, in a sense, covered over. Yeah.
So you started taking some classes, I assume?
Well, that was back in 1987.
Oh, there weren't very.
So it was very different than now, where animal communicators are everywhere and you can find classes almost pretty much in every state. Back then, Penelope did have her first book available, and then her audio tapes. And so I did self-study for quite some time. And that proved to have its limitations. And I wasn't able to travel to where she was teaching when she was teaching and do all of that. So that was my beginning. And then I actually went to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, which is about energy healing and human consciousness, energy fields with humans, which was a total 180-degree turn for me. And that helped me come into my sensory system and be able to open and expand my field and understand where so many of my blocks were and what was going on. And then I worked with Jerry Ryan and had brought her in to do a workshop, where I lived at the time in Vermont. And once I moved to Virginia, I started working with now longtime friend Patty Summers. And but it was really through my work with the Barbara Brennan School, it was a 4-year program, that I started being able to connect in a way where I could understand it. I didn't realize that there was information that would come in so quickly, and I couldn't really discern and decipher things or believe. I had so much self-doubt and such a lack of trust in not only what I was getting, but that it was even a thing. As often happens when something's so natural for somebody, you don't even know that it's happening. And I had so much clouding me. I mean, huge distrust and self-doubt, that I would close down. Like, I'd get stuff and I would close down.
Oh, wow.
Much like my horse. So we were good mirrors for each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was your major hurdle to get past those blocks. And
yeah, absolutely. And so that's part of why I work so much with people. And that's a common thing with animal communication. I mean, I see it in my clients all the time. It's very, very common to not trust your inner sense. Yeah. It's endemic in our culture. It's absolutely endemic. And so, I've learned the things that other when I did work with other communicators, or I took a class, or I read what people were writing, it didn't click, because I couldn't find how to find those places inside of myself. And so really it was through huge, deep personal work that I could be able to trust my intuitive sense. And I actually didn't hang my shingle for probably 5 or 6 years until my friend was urging me to. She says, "You're doing it anyway in your sessions, so you might as well say that you're doing it." But that speaking out loud, it was such a huge piece. And I know that it is for so many people. It's such a common thing for people. There's been so many breakthroughs. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am after these decades of doing this without continuously having openings. I call them openings or breakthroughs, right? Around speaking up, speaking out. When I was first starting doing this, and when I really started practicing it, it was more in the early 90s. You'd say animal communication, people would look at you at that time like you had 4 heads and were from outer space. And so now at least at least here in California, it's such a relief, because people are like, "Oh yeah, I know this communicator. Oh yeah." It's not as unusual. But it's also, it was also about asking for money and having a private practice. There's so many different facets to it that have been pieces of my experience where there've been ongoing breakthroughs. And I mean, I'm proud to say that at one, I am in this field, and I have consistently made over six figures. I mean, that's pretty unusual.
Wow.
And it's because of that deepening, not only with myself, but part of the breakthrough actually has been through animals that have passed on, my own animals that have helped me really be more present with the spiritual world, not just with communicating conscious, with conversations back and forth and relaying information, but really allowing and trusting that my connection with source, and that knowing that we're far more than just us in our physical bodies. Just, that was those openings have been prompted through my animals who've passed away, and also people that I've known who've passed away, and now with my horse, with Ibis, his theme is to continue the connection. And that contact with him now is more expansive and full than ever. Yeah. And so all of those connections helped me. Part of what would hold me back also was deep grief, and how it would cloud so much of my experience, because I would be looking back there. We could spend hours talking about that, and I do, and the animals helped me be able to find a place inside where I could focus on moving forward and not staying in deep grief where I would in the past be non-functional. I mean, when my cat Scarlet, who was 18, died, and 9 days later my dog Liza died, I just was so deeply entrenched in grief. And even though I was working, I had an extremely difficult time, depressed and really, really challenging. And at some point in there, I got to a place where I made a decision to use that grief for a greater good. And that shifted everything. It wasn't immediate, but it started me going in a different direction than just spiraling down. And now with Ibis's passing, my dad died just a year ago, and then Ibis died 11 months after that. And I wouldn't have been able to go through those two transitions, key, important, major relationships, and stay afloat had I not done all that previous work. It's like everything was a preparation for that. And now, I calling it using grief to fuel forward motion. And the openings that affords and allows changes everything in my experience, and assists my communications like dramatically.
So you're able to channel all these life events, these challenges, into something to help build your life and make it more expansive. And it may have been spurred on by animal communication, but it's really not just animal communication. It's opening up your own soul pretty much to use all these things that you have available to you.
It's true. And at some point I got that if I just keep this stuff to myself, well, what's the point in that? Like, that's all good. It's good. There's no doubt about that. But it was meant to be shared. Like, I'm going through this for more than just me, and so that it's meant to be shared. Like, I get these messages and information to be shared. It's not just for me to hold on to. And it's not only for it is absolutely for my own personal growth, but that has helped me open up to being able to share it more and more.
Yeah.
And that feeds me.
And now you're a professional animal communicator. You've been for quite a long time, and a teacher in this.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love is that there are lots of teachers and communicators out there now, but you're you, and you have the tools and the outlook and the insights that only you experienced in your own way. And you're the teacher and animal communicator who you are because of everything you've been through. And wow, aren't we all lucky to have somebody like you? You did
Thank
the
you.
hard work for us.
Well, thank you. But you know what? I do appreciate that. And it's true for each of us.
Yeah.
We each are a combination of what we've been through, and we open and share through those places. And like every communicator or every person in every job or whatever area of your life, we each bring forward very unique and particular gifts that only we can bring through. Like nobody else can do it in the same way. And that's the beauty. Like we each, like the medicine that we get for ourselves can be something for other people.
Yeah.
And and that's beautiful, because we each hold something really important.
Yeah. And I want people to celebrate that in themselves, because so often I see them frustrated and blocked because they aren't doing it like somebody else. And well,
It's easy.
not about doing it like somebody else, it's doing it like you. Find your way.
Exactly. Comparing
Yeah.
is also endemic. And it really is a way for us, it really comes from a place of fear. Uh, uh, is how I see it. It's a defense that says, I'm scared. I'm scared to just be who I am, and I don't trust what I have.
Mhm.
And when I work with clients, that's part of the key. It's like, that's exactly what we want to help you cultivate, is how are you feeling that? How do you hear that? How do you sense that? What senses does that come into you through? And that's beautiful. That's magnificent. It's part of the fun in working with groups, that everybody can start to see that for each other, because it's easier to see it in somebody else. Oh, well, when you said that was like so in your heart, but when you saw that, when you got this amazing picture, and when you got that information, you like had this download that was like phenomenal, like, oh my God. One is not more right than the other. They all come together, and we're all facets, and how our perspectives are so important. So important.
I'm so glad that you were able to tell this part of your story, because it's so important. I know it's going to be very helpful for people to hear this and hopefully pattern themselves after you and your success.